All right, we're live.
Better. Well, good morning, everybody, and I'd just like to welcome everybody to a special meeting for our library board, November the 5th, 2020. And I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask for provisions of disclosure, pecuniary interest, or any general nature thereof. Seeing none, we'll move on to our action items. And the first one we have is the Strathcona Library Reserve Fund request deferred from October 27th for our library. You taking us through this, Lindsay?
Yeah, so we can walk through,
highlight it.
highlight the points of the report, and then if you want, I can turn it back over to you to discuss those items that came up at our meeting with Strathcona.
Right.
Yeah, okay, so the report before you that was introduced at our last meeting, it is requesting funds from the Strathcona Library Reserve Fund to be allocated to the Strathcona and Early On Library Renovation Project. So this fund currently sits at $67,415, and we are requesting $60,000 of that to be allocated to this project, which would go along with the $525,000 provincial funding that was received for the early on portion of this project. So, as we've discussed, these funds, this project will help us, revision the Strathcona Library space, create that dedicated early on child and family center space, and allow us to enhance some of the features of the library as well. So adding in office space for library staff, creating those 2 designated programming areas in the library, one housing the kitchenette or servery and an accessible washroom, and then the program room at the back for early on programming and also for library use. So, as we discussed at the last meeting, we are coming back to you with this request for additional funds following the revised bid that came back from the renovation company. And this prompted our discussion last week regarding questions that this raised. And so the letter was submitted to Strathcona Caradoc, and myself and Cindy and Jim, the chair, and met with Mayor Vanderhaven and Strathcona Caradoc staff to discuss the concerns that were raised and that connect with this report. So, Mr. Chair, did you want to comment on how those questions were discussed and what resolution came out of that meeting?
Yes, I can do. And Cindy can help me with this as well, because she was there as well. But during the meeting, we did discuss the lease agreements, where we were, and then what was the actual cost associated to this project. And the one item was $270,000 for hydro, for power. And the understanding is that I've got a better understanding now that they've got to go over a couple of streets and bring power into the building, and it's only going to be used for the library, and they've got to bring us to a 400 amp service as opposed to 200 amp service. And we've got confirmation that it's just for the library. It's not for any other use because I'm talking about shared costs with it. There's no other use that's related to Strathcona Caradoc other than to supply the library building with that increased cost because of the HVAC increase, and the same thing with the water. We need an increase of water because of the kitchen, the dishwasher, and the other washroom being added. So after that's explained, if we do move forward, or should we move forward, then those costs are going to be borne by this. These construction costs are going to be borne by the grant, the application we've got, or the grant approval, and the $60,000 we want to take from this bequeath. So that's my understanding after coming out of that meeting. Is there any questions with that, or? Okay, so then my question is, if we want to approve this motion, and let me just pull it back up here. The recommendation is that we take the $60,000 and use it towards this library early on renovation capital project. Then I just wonder if there should be some caveat in there, because we want to make sure it moves forward, and we've got some discussion with responsibility to the municipality for the lease. And I want to, if we do that, is it proper for us to say, subject to this project moving forward? You know what I'm saying here? Lindsay?
Yes, sorry. Yes, so we can revise that, the recommendation, so it says, approve the allocation of $60,000 from the Strathroy Library Reserves Fund to the Strathroy Library early on renovation capital. Because the other point was that Strathroy Caradoc is going to go back to their council to request, to discuss their portion of what the municipality may be willing to pay to offset those costs for that hydro and water service. So you want this recommendation to align with that, if that happens.
Yeah, but was that the discussion that was $57,000 that Strathroy was paying towards this project, or is that over and above that?
That was within this. So I think their report is I think it's the remaining 87,000 is what they would then be asking their council to approve. Okay,
good. So, but I just, because we're going to discuss our next action item, we're going to discuss that and make sure that's why I just want with this, it says, provided the other, more or less, if we agree to this, it'll be provided that our item B1 moves forward after we have further discussion on that. Is that a fair statement, Lindsay?
So, sorry.
Oh. I know. Sorry, Kathy Burkert?
Oh, yeah, I Chair, I think that makes sense. I mean, we still have another action item to discuss after this. And I think there's still more discussion happening at the Strathroy level. So I think adding that caveat that obviously the money's transferred if the project proceeds, and if for some reason it doesn't, then the money obviously just goes back.
Yes. Yeah. I don't want it that this saying that with the way this motion is, I don't want it to look like we're already approving B1.
Yep.
So that's all. Okay. So would somebody prepared to make that a motion with that caveat? Warden, and seconded by Brad. Further discussion on it? All in favor? Everybody? Good. All in favor. Thank you. Now we'll move on to item B1, which is the library action item for the PowerPoint presentation. Lindsay, or wait a minute, Cindy, are you taking us through this one?
We went through the presentation at the last meeting. Do you want me to walk you through the presentation again?
Briefly, just because I understand it better now than what I did the last presentation. Yep, if you could, please.
Chris Bailey, can you throw up the presentation?
Or give me screen sharing and I can do it either way.
I didn't have it ready, so I just gave you co-host Lindsay, so you should be good.
Yeah, I'll just bring it up. Just
So Lindsay, if you want to just take it to the first slide. So at the last meeting, we actually did walk you through the drawings and the plans for the new space. Are you interested in us walking through that again, Jim? Because we have all the members on today. Or do you want to do that?
Yeah, I think we should just go through this in a brief synopsis of it, because we did look at it, but and then it's when the next where's the slide for the back end of the building where we're adding the offices around the side? And I was looking at that one.
So the very
Okay, I
first
see him. Yeah.
we have here is actually the library space.
Okay, now what's a mutual space when we talk about that, or the shared space?
Shared space. Lindsay, do you want to walk them through what we would determine as shared space here?
Yeah, so the shared space building is space shared with, between library and early on, but also shared with the museum. So that includes the area, it includes the staff room and existing here, and a portion of kind of this walkway space, basically that all anyone who would be entering the building would walk through. Shared space includes the mechanical room, and then the portion of the picture that is cut off includes the Wright Family Research Room. So up here where my cursor is, and then a portion of that new programming space. It's been proposed that a portion of that could be shared space as well. When it's not being used for early on programming, then it could be available for other use. So those are those shared spaces in the facility. And then also, the new universal washroom, because it would serve the entire building.
Okay. Now that shared space, when you behind the museum storage and behind the Wright office, that's going to be a if I understand it correctly, that's going to be a like a meeting room that we could jointly use as our some of our childhood education programs we use. But
Exactly.
so that's classed as a shared space.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so then we pay a portion of that lease with Strathroy Caradoc, and so because I'm just trying to understand in our other buildings that meeting room is not is that included in our square footage?
It is, yes. This
Okay.
is the only this would be the only facility that has that shared space.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And then the next drawing, Lindsay, if you want to show that. So that's the proposed changes that we talked to with the head office. So this includes that accessible washroom that's there. And then we talked about this space then being shared between head office and social services in the future.
So Cindy, if we do move forward with this and we put the social services offices over there for use by clients within the county, is there cost to create that, or is it just the washroom costs?
There will be some minor costs in terms of we have an open space that's between the row of offices, and currently where there's kind of like an open area where there used to be stacks of books. What we really need to do is put some kind of a wall or divider just for confidentiality. So we're going to try to really make that minor in the kind of renovations that we do, because we want to have flexibility and adaptability in this space in case we want to make changes down the road.
Thank you.
And we have money, we have a bit of money in our capital account to be able to do that. You want to go to the next slide, Lindsay? So I'll quickly kind of go through this, but we kind of listed it as, here's some issues that we wanted to discuss them last time. We wanted to talk about the lease and the lease rates. So that's at Strathroy Caradoc, the library headquarters, and the Strathroy Library and the early on space. So we had our capital renovation costs. So we had the original estimates. Then we had the RFP bid award that came forward in September of 2020. If you remember, we came back to the library board with the recommendation at that time. Because the library board made the decision not to rent additional space in the city hall location, they had to go back and ask for a revision. So we got this revised bid award, which came in October of 2020. And then Lindsay and I came back to the library board to talk about that. Next slide, Lindsay. For our lease costs. So our lease for the Strathroy Library has expired. So that one expired on December 31st, 2018. The lease for the library headquarters needs to be updated, existing 2020 lease costs are below, and they are at the comprehensive library rates. So we have the square footage. The back it just shows you the square footage currently for our library, for our head office, and it shows you that comprehensive rate, which is the 1128.
Can I just ask a question, Cindy? Sorry, and I don't know, Cindy or Lindsay maybe might be able to answer that. And sorry to just jump in, Chair.
Oh,
But-
it's okay because I have trouble seeing everybody.
Okay.
With it, I got it. I don't
Yeah, I
have
know.
every. Okay.
Okay, how come we are paying a comprehensive rate for head office?
So we talked briefly about this at the last meeting, and it kind of, I guess, just really got uncovered when we were doing some of these negotiations, and Lindsay and I actually kind of preparing this presentation. So when it originally was put in place, it was at this enhanced rate. And back in, we think it was between 2014 and 2015, it got changed to the comprehensive rate. I want to point out this is prior to Lindsay or myself in these roles. So we don't have the backup or history to explain that. At our meeting this week when we met with the Strathroy mayor and the staff, we did ask this question. So I can tell you they have gone back to their finance area to see if they can find a reason why that rate changed. Because currently it doesn't actually match our policy at the library board. Hope that answers the question.
Kathy?
Yep, nope, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, I think when we finish this, we want to look at all the space with Strathroy and what we feel the rate should be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Do the next slide, Lindsay. So our lease rates. So this is where we go into, if we look at the library board policy, we have the basic, we have the enhanced, and we have the comprehensive. So that definition, you can see what a comprehensive is. It has to be larger than that 6,000 square feet. And as you know, the library head office doesn't fit within that. And we also know that there wasn't any capital or any kind of other major improvements to the head office. And I guess that's why we kind of were asking that question. Next slide, please, Lindsay. So the library headquarters. So we kind of put this little spreadsheet together to show you. So we're showing you the original rate was that enhanced rate. The rate was revised to comprehensive rate. And the table below just shows you the difference between the two rates. So the enhanced is at $8.19, and the comprehensive is at just over $11. So changes to headquarters, just as a reminder. The library will now be sharing the headquarters with social services. We're very excited by that change. There's no change to the square footage there. And the capital addition that we're talking about here is that accessible washroom. So this will really allow clients to be able to come in and use the washroom facilities, and our staff will be able to have their own separate washroom. And especially in our current environment, when we're dealing with COVID-19, I think it's really important to add this accessible washroom to this. Next slide, please. So the changes to the Strathroy Library. So we're moving the children's sections to the front of that library, so really to tie in with our early on child and family center. We have those addition of the new offices. As a reminder, we got the $525,000 to create the child and family center. And that child and family center is really to reach out to the community, bring other agencies into the library, into this space, and make it really that community hub. That's what a child and family center is all about. Also part of this capital improvement is that programming area, kind of two. And we also have a kitchenette, we have a family washroom, and we have the community offices. For example, if the health unit wants to come in, or even some of our early on staff. We have our child social services staff that can come in and use that space in compliance. Lindsay, next slide. So the changes to the Strathroy Library. So if you look at the current, that's where we are today in 2020. You can see our current square footage is at 11,052. The second column over is our proposed. So the early on space would be that 850. The library then would become the 10,083. So we have the total of 10,933. See that this was part of our negotiations and conversations with Strathroy, and that shows is actually in the proposed, the square footage is a little bit less than it was in the current. So the 119, just a small little amount, but that was based on some of the discussions that we had in regards to that space. So the issue, of course, is the early on space. Should it be at that enhanced rate or the comprehensive rate? And that's part of the discussion that you guys are having today. So there's the Strathroy Library with the square footage, there's the early on, and there's the total. And we just, again, put a little calculation to show you what it would, the early on would be at enhanced rate versus what the early on would be at that comprehensive rate. So you really could understand the difference between the two rates when you're having your discussions.
Just a question, if I could, Cindy, were you of the belief that we would be paying the enhanced rate for the early on with the discussion with the previous CO from Strathroy?
When Lindsay and I started these initial discussions, especially when we applied for the funding, there was a little piece in there that talked about how this could benefit the whole program. So we were really trying not to increase our rates and trying to see how we could reduce our early on costs. So we did talk to the previous CAO about that before we even applied, because as you know, we do have very limited funding when it comes to our early on.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide, please. So this is just that snapshot that talked about the estimate that we had originally in August before they went for the RFP. It talks about the first original bid, and then the third column there is the revision to the bid when we decided, the library board decided that we weren't going to rent the additional space in the Strathroy City Hall. And the reason that we had to come back to the library board is that increase in the amount of capital that was required for that childcare and family early on center. Next slide, Lindsay. So again, just a reminder that we got that $525,000 from the province for the early on child and family center, and we are very grateful for being able to receive that grant. The project originally had a completion date of December 31st, 2020. And I can tell you again that I have confirmed with the ministry, and I have some communication from the ministry, that we're able to extend that to March 31st, 2021. And I have talked to Strathroy Caradoc about that, because we really do have to get the project completed by that date, or we risk losing funding. Just want to remind you that we do actually have these capital dollars in our hands, but we do have to, for audit reasons, comply with their requirements. Next slide, please. So I guess our concerns, if I'm wrapping it up, and we had lots of discussions, but it was really around those costs for the electrical service and the water service. So the total of that is the $175,000. But we have heard from Strathroy Caradoc this week that these costs are directly for the renovations that are happening in Strathroy because of our changes for the early on child and family center. Again, we talked about that, the family washroom, the kitchenette and the costs associated with the kitchenette, the lighting that we'll have there, HVAC costs, and about running that and these additional programs. So again, if we want to look at the September cost to the October cost, you can see where there is a big change in that. So next slide, please, Lindsay. Yeah. So again, 175, the limit on the capital funding. We also did talk about the library still has some renovation costs as part of this project, as we have to move the children's section from the middle kind of in the Strathroy Library, and we're moving that up to the front to be part of that whole experience of the early on child and family center. And those are costs that we already had in our budget. We knew that we were going to be doing that. We had that as part of the budget process. So those are our costs. They're not the capital costs. Next slide, please. And then the previous library board decision, we already talked about this, was not to go into that additional space. Next slide, Lindsay. So then again, Lindsay talked about this earlier, but where would we fund this from? Again, the Provincial Branch, and then we're coming back to ask me for that reserve amount for the $60,000. And then Strathroy Caradoc has also offered or they're going to be going to their council very shortly to ask if they can fund the difference. Next slide, please. So the options and decisions to be made. So of course, we're coming back to that conversation around those lease rates. So we have the headquarters. Should this be an enhanced or comprehensive? Or what would push it to be at that comprehensive rate? We'd really like to be able to understand that. The early on child and family center. Should this be at the enhanced or comprehensive lease rates? And maybe that's only for a period of time. Maybe that's something that we can go back and stop talking about because this capital dollars is brought into this space. The new leases are required for both the headquarters and the library, Strathroy Library. And Lindsay and I have started some of those initial conversations, but we don't have a lease finalized and we don't have a term of the lease. We haven't really talked about that, but we do know that we're needing new leases. And the capital. So we talked about the headquarters, about the accessible washroom, and we've talked about the early on child and family center. Next slide, please. So these are your options. So we could reduce the scope of the project and go back and try to get some new pricing. I did reach out to Strathroy Caradoc yesterday to talk a little bit about that, because as you know, we put some blocks in there for programming. We really did it so that we had light to make it feel like it's all not boxed in. It's part of the flow, it's part of the feel space that we're looking for. We could go back and maybe revise that, but it's going to really change away from the look and feel that we were trying to do in that space. And I'm not sure how much we can really save from that. We could ask Strathroy Caradoc to pay for the pool, $175,000 for the electrical service and water. I do want to point out again that Strathroy Caradoc has willing to pay the difference from the whole project. So the 525, we put in the 60, and they would put in the difference for the space. 3 would be proceed with the library board funding, including the grant, the reserve, and the Strathroy Caradoc, and of course the headquarters, the accessible washroom. 4 would be to proceed with option 3 and request reduced lease rate amounts. And then, of course, we have the last one, which would be don't move forward with the project. If we don't move forward with the project, that means we're giving back $525,000 to the province. And I think that's my last slide, Lindsay. So it's kind of leave it as these are the options that we're hoping that we can discuss today and come to some kind of decision on how to move forward.
Okay. Thank you. I guess now it comes time for the decision, but if I, just a second.
Sorry, did you want me to bring that presentation back up or?
Yeah, no, I'm just, I'm having trouble with my Zoom here. Just give me a second. Oh man, I don't know. It just, my screen just went up to Zoom. I never touched anything.
You can only see yourself. Is that?
No.
Oh.
Oh. There you go. Okay, sorry. Internet. Got to blame it on something because it sure wouldn't be my fault. I'm sorry, Cindy, what was the last question? Or was it Lindsay?
I think we just said that we'll put it back to you, Jim, to ask the group around the options that we proposed and determine how we move forward.
Yeah, okay, I'm pulling them up on my other screen here, but yeah, I guess if we've got any questions about like how this moves forward, but when I look at this, I think there's 525 we've got plus a 60, so we're going to spend 635, and then Strathroy Caradoc's picking up the difference. Is that the idea, Lindsay?
Yes, so I think their request is for 87,000.
Chair, can I ask a question?
Yes, Ruth, go ahead.
Does the total cost include the 175,000?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Yep.
Okay.
And the other thing is what part of the discussion I had was because they called it as a provisional. or as a allowance. But I guess these are firm prices, so it won't go over what we're approving today if we
Okay.
approve it. So, and that was really part of the question I had in our last library board meeting is, what does that mean? Does that mean that it's a hard cost or it's flexible? But all those items they're firm. That's the answer I get from their technical people. Mary Gay?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Mosley. I'm certainly not in favor of not moving forward with this project. I think it's important to the community of Strathroy-Caradoc. We have had those dollars given to us to put into it. It's an investment. And I don't have any problem moving forward once it's been explained how that all works with the $60,000 coming out of that estate fund or bereavement fund or whatever you want to call it. I guess my concern is, though, the comprehensive rate being paid to the library headquarters. So I'm just wondering what everybody else thinks about that.
I just think it was an error done in 2014, and I just looked back to see who was the warden at the time, and I'm just glad it wasn't me. But I do believe that the rate should be an enhanced rate, and that's it. And the same thing with the early childhood space. They should be set at enhanced rates, and the rest is a library. And I think because of enhanced rates, because this is something that's going to carry forward every year. You know, it's not just now, it's a difference between an enhanced and a comprehensive rate. And we moved forward with the understanding it'd be a enhanced rate from previous administrators. And that's what I understand. And so, you know, if I look at it and say, we need an enhanced rate at those two spaces, and then we come to an agreement on then they do become a true comprehensive library because they do have a meeting room. Mary Gay?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Mosley. So I guess my next question, I don't know whether Lindsay wants to take a stab at it or Cindy, but that 850 square feet for the early childhood programming area, why isn't that a basic rate?
Through the chair, you know, we have had that discussion, and you know, Cindy and I, that's the point that, you know, that we have raised with Strathroy-Caradoc is that, you know, we're coming to this project with the capital funds. We do have that limited, you know, operating budget, which is much smaller than most other municipalities have to work with, and so that was part of our discussion, and you know, something that we did try to negotiate and work towards. This is where we've landed at this point. So, you know, that has been our challenge all along to make that point in these discussions with Strathroy-Caradoc. You know, selling the service obviously as an improvement to the community and all of that, making the distinction between library service and early on service, because this is a separate pot of funding. And so, you know, that's what has brought us to this point where we have been arguing that side, but that it hasn't been established that we'll be given that, you know, at a decreased rate. We haven't been asking for the basic rate, you know, we've been focusing on that enhanced rate or some sort of reduction that you know, recognizes the capital funds that have been put forward for this project. But unfortunately, this is kind of where we're at right now.
So would this be similar to what we're trying to get done in Middlesex Center, or understand in Middlesex Center, so that it's not different across the county?
Yes, I mean, it has been a similar, you know, similar discussions and work on that project. That lease hasn't been finalized yet. What has been discussed is, you know, a different rate for early on space. We have had, so we are currently leasing the basement of the Ilderton branch for early on use at a lower rate than any of the rates for library space. So, you know, it's our understanding at this point that will continue, but that lease hasn't been finalized. In the Ilderton project, that's brand new space and dedicated early on space. So those are the, you know, the parameters that we've been able to to negotiate with for Middlesex Center. So we haven't had that same result with Strathroy Caradoc with those discussions.
Yeah, I think it comes back too because of and other library extensions and expansions when we built them for comprehensive, is that the capital was all done by the municipality, but this capital is being done by basically the library, regardless of whether we get the grant or not. Not regardless, but and the reason is because we do get the grant, but I think it's because it's not a capital cost to Strathroy Caradoc, so the lease rate should reflect it. That's my thinking anyhow. I don't know if it answers your question, Mary Gay, and I'm going to go to Brad here. Brad?
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. To me, it's almost like I see it kind of as two separate issues. I mean, I want this to move forward, and I wonder if we're getting tied up a little bit on the leasing. Maybe we should just concentrate on getting like I think Strathroy is going to offer to make the difference up. At least that gets the project going. That's number one. Then we negotiate separately, if you want to call it that, for the lease agreements. I just don't want to hold up the project. That's my biggest fear. Because time is becoming a factor.
Yep, I can agree with that, but I think too, though, that we have to make sure we know what we're going to spend in the future with respect to this addition going on and this extra work going through. And I think now's the time, because we're past the lease, that it's the opportunity to make sure we're all on the same page. I'll go to Kathy Burkhardt.
Great, thanks, Jim. So I agree. I don't think that not moving forward or reducing the scope and going back and looking at how this can be done differently is an option. I think that we've received money from the province. We need to utilize it, and we need to move forward with this. So my idea would be that what we hand back to Strathroy for discussion at council is the request for them to come in with this 87,000 plus what we expect them, what we expect to pay for the lease, and have it all on the table for them to discuss then. To the chair's point, I think we need to know what our costs are going forward. And I do think it needs to be consistent right across the county. So if we're paying a basic rate in Middlesex Center, or if we're paying a basic rate in Lucan-Bedolph, or a basic rate wherever, we need to be paying that basic rate in Strathroy Caradoc, the enhanced rate for the office or whatever, but it needs to be consistent. And I think we cannot lose sight of that. To all the points that the chair said, the fact that, you know, we're agreeing to put capital costs into this, which is not something that we would necessarily do in another municipality. So my thoughts are everything goes to Strathroy for discussion at council, and then their council can decide whether they're in or whether they're out.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the right avenue to go down. And I think it basically just says, we're prepared to do it. We're prepared to spend this money on it, but these are the lease rates we expect. And we want a lease agreement for so many years, and not dictate, but just make these suggestions and an opt out of the lease either way, no matter how you want to set it, but just make it very fair to everybody. But, and then Strathroy Caradoc can say, yeah, that's a good deal for us, because there's a big advantage to that municipality to have that there, as well as any place else we put it. So, and understand too that it's going to affect our county library budget in years to come. So I think it's important that we at least know which way we're going. And to Brad's point of view, I think the quicker we get it to them, the better. And then at least they can, because Fred did tell us the next council meeting, it's only about a week away. And if they can get that on the ticket and get it done, it would move it forward. So I guess, you know, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ruth. Unmute, Ruth. You're muted. There you go.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. We're all new at this.
I do have a question about the 60,000 bequest. I know it was left to the library as some type of fund to be used for the library, but is there any chance at all that there could be questions from anyone on our using it towards the early on project? I mean, I know you have called it the early on library project, but I have a concern there. I just want to make sure there's not going to be anyone questioning us using that 60,000. And I watched the YouTube video and I didn't hear specifically an answer around that.
Through the chair. So those funds don't have stipulations with them except that they have been obviously allocated to the Strathroy branch. So, you know, from my understanding and the discussions that we've had amongst staff would be that these funds are allocated for, you know, can be allocated towards improvements to the library space. The Early On Child and Family Center project helps us accomplish those improvements. So it really, it's, you know, I'm very confident that we could make that argument that it is improving the entire overall library service to the community. One aspect of that is the Early On Child and Family Center services, but it's this whole revisioning of the space, you know, shifting around where social services are accessed and what the look and feel of the library is when you walk in the door. That $60,000 will go towards the overall project. So I think it does, you know, we are, you know, using those funds responsibly if they were to go to this project. And could definitely be argued that it is for the betterment of the library as a whole.
Thank you.
Hey, just maybe a quick question, and maybe to Brad, because from Strathroy, but there was talk about some work being done out there with a reading room, upgrading some areas there. Not the reading room, the reading garden. You know, are you aware of that? Like Fred said, something like $250,000 spent on outside work. Do you know what that's about? Or
There was plans, Jim, I think the former CEO started the idea of renovating the whole town hall, joining it with the library building, and then doing something with the reading area at the back. But those plans never did really get off the ground very much.
okay, no, I just want to know, because I think as a board we have to be informed of what's happening there, because we did put capital in it years ago. So, yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, sorry, Jim. If I could maybe direct this to Lindsay. I'm not probably slow on the uptake, so bear with me. But I just want to make sure I got my facts all right. So we lease the library now at a comprehensive rate for the whole facility, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're looking at then is changing the headquarters to a lesser amount, because I say that was done. I don't know who did that, but it was done probably incorrectly. Don't disagree. The new space, is that now, or is that part of what we're paying for now, or is that like new? You guys don't pay for that front section now, do you?
We do, yes. So currently the front programming space is it's shared space between the library and the museum.
So that would be a change if we move that back to basic or enhanced or whatever. And then what about the rest of the part? Is that still going to be comprehensive, or do we lose space there and drop it back to, or not? I'm just trying to get my head around the numbers.
Yeah, in the rest of the library. So that 850 square feet, that space is focusing on that front program space, okay, and the programming room at the rear. So the rest of the library space, those areas, you know, it's still our expectation that those would be comprehensive rate because it's comprehensive library space. So it's really those two program areas that are in question.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure I got it straight in my head. Thanks.
Yeah. Just to carry this forward, I wonder if and did you have a prepared motion yet? I'm just looking here for a motion, but I don't see one. But was there a prepared motion to move this forward, Lindsay?
So I think like the motion was connected to that report. So right. If there's another, you know, like as the warden indicated, you know, if there are additional questions, or so maybe another motion has to be created for that. for the lease rate.
Yeah,
question.
I would think, and after hearing from our warden as well, I think we should put the report or a letter back to to Strathroy Caradoc to state we're prepared to move forward with this project at the agreed to prices of the 525 plus the 60. I guess it's 635 for the washrooms and the early childhood, and that and this is based upon our lease rate established as, you know, and put down what our lease rates, what the library board recommends as our lease rates and moving forward. And that would be established as the library head office area, which is only 3,608 square feet at the comprehensive rate, and the early childhood education area, which should be at the comprehensive rate, and then the agreement on what's the shared space, so we all know what we're talking about, and then the other is a comprehensive library, and we should establish a term of the lease, and I guess a way to anybody wants to opt out of it, they can, but the usual format for a lease. And if that carries with it, then Strathroy Caradoc can make the decision on moving forward. But we're prepared to move forward, but I think we're prepared that it won't cost us, I'm going to say, an extended arm and leg over years. And we do get what we want with respect to it, and we're prepared to put the money into it. But anyhow, Mary Gay.
Yes, thank you, Chair Mosley. So just for clarification, so is that negotiations around the offices at enhanced rate or comprehensive rate?
The head office?
Yes.
It would be at the enhanced rate.
Okay. Okay.
So that's what I said. It's only, it's 3,608.4 square feet.
Yep.
So that's what I get, but.
Okay.
Is that fair to go that way?
And then the 850 square feet for the early on space, is that if we did suggest basic, is that consistent with the other libraries that have that program, Lindsay and Cindy? There you are down in that corner now.
Sorry, go ahead, Cindy.
As we said, we're still in discussions with Middlesex Center. Lindsay, can you remind me what the Alderton library space is?
Yes, so currently I think the proposed lease rate for that and for the early on space is it's either 70 or 80% of the enhanced rate. So it's not shifting between rates. So I'll confirm, I can probably confirm it right now. I just have to find that note. But it's maintaining that rate, just a portion of it. So
that's the rate we're paying now for the basement section?
Yes.
Okay. Then I guess what I want to ensure is that if we do this with Strathroy, it has to be identical to what we're doing across the county. So, I mean, and we could put that the rate for the early childhood section at the rate that's identical to what Middlesex Center is. Comments? Hands going up? Don't see any?
I'll make that motion.
Whoa, hold on.
Well, if you're ready, when you're ready, if there's
Okay.
no discussion.
Okay, well, let's get the motion down that we understand so that we can move forward with it. But I agree with you, Mary Gay, but if you got anything, any idea how the motion read, Lindsay or Kathy?
So that Middlesex County Library Board will communicate a lease rate expectations or a lease rate request for the Strathroy Library and library headquarters spaces. And the term of the lease. And that the approval for this project will be determined based on the results of that. That's a little muddled.
I think something to the effect that we're moving forward, provided we're in agreement with the lease rates.
Yeah.
You know, with establishing the lease rates and terms and so on. But just when I get to that, I know that I'm coming to Kathy, just a second. The lease, what I got from Fred in the discussion was he didn't want a long lease because of maybe it's a chance to change it or really adjust it accordingly. But I think it's and so we should be looking at our term that we think is fair for the library board and for Strathroy. And, you know, probably 10 years is too long and 5 years too short, but, you know, whatever we decide. And I'll just take it, move it to you, Kathy, for any questions and or
Well,
suggestions.
I guess to that question, did he give any indication as to what Strathroy was looking for in the length of term?
No, he didn't. He just, like he didn't to me. Cindy, did he?
No, we really didn't get into the length. They did have a bit of a conversation in regards to wanting it, I think, a little bit less in terms, like not a 20-year lease. Brad can jump in if he knows a little bit more. But it was their discussion with us, anyway, with Lindsay and I, was really around that shared space. Because the square footage, as I mentioned, kind of went down a little bit, very little, but it did go down a little bit as that shared space increased. So they really wanted to be able to come back and review that for a year or two to say, are we using that space? Is it really shared space? That type of thing. So that was kind of our initial discussion that we had with the CIO.
I'm comfortable with that. I think that it is a reasonable give on our part. I really want the motion to be clear on the consistency of lease rates across the county. So I don't know whether you've found that out for sure, Lindsay, right now, but if we're paying 80% of enhanced in Middlesex Center, then that's what we should be saying what we'll do for Strathroy, whatever that is. So I think that the motion needs to be that the lease rates are consistent across the county. And then however it's delivered to Strathroy, that can be laid out. But I also want in there so that it's going to go to council, that this is a package that we are sending to Strathroy Council for council to decide on for their next meeting. That needs to be clear that it's not that this is our offer and Strathroy Council can approve it.
Yeah, I don't think it should be. I agree with you there. It's like not an ultimatum, but it's the only way we can move forward with it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's how it should be.
Time is of the essence.
Yes.
And I think that there has been, I mean, you guys have had a lot of discussions back and forth. And I think if our library board is clear on what we want the directions to be, then there's really no other negotiation at this point.
Okay. Any other, Mary Gay?
Just a comment. So when you're talking about the length of the agreement, we're 2 years left in this mandate. And do we want something to continue into not the next term, but the next term? So I'm just wondering, do we want something that has to be negotiated by the next board or the next board? That should be a consideration, should it not?
But in fairness, we've got some that are 20 years. So it goes long beyond that.
I realize that, but you did
But-
say that Fred didn't want anything 10
Well-
years. That's my concern.
No, I didn't say 10 year. He gave me the indication he didn't want anything, like when we said we've got one that's like our 20, he wasn't interested in that. He
Okay.
wanted more short term. So I think for the amount of money we're putting in, we should be looking at 7 to 10 years for the agreement, so that we at least will be able to recoup our money out of it.
Okay.
Yep.
Just to be clear on that.
Yeah. But I don't know, I don't do a lot of leasing, but what's a standard term? To make it fair to everybody. And the other thing is how long of an opt-out you want. If Strathroy doesn't want it, then they got to give you a certain amount of notice, and vice versa. There should be something in the agreement for that. So what do we think about a lease term, council? Or sorry,
Well, I would, oh,
course I
sorry,
have
if
it.
I can.
no.
I
go
would
ahead.
just caution against having a board do something the first year of their term. That's just my thought on that. I have no idea who's going to be there next term. Nobody does, but I just wouldn't want to saddle somebody with this the first year.
Yeah, but what we're
Just a
doing,
comment.
though, if we go at least 7 years, then we're not going to saddle anybody with anything. It'll be, it'd be no different than any other agreement we got across the county, other than the term. Kathy?
So if it was 7 years, but I think Lindsay said that there was some concern on Strathroy's end about the shared space. Could there be a clause in there? Could we offer them a clause that after 2 years or whatever, maybe that is something that can be negotiated between administrations, that it's at least looked at. And maybe that's a give that we can give Strathroy, that for that shared space, that it's
Yeah.
looked at in 2 or
And
3.
Yeah, if it's looked at by administration, at least we'll know maybe ours will go down, or, or up our quantity of shared space. So I think in fairness, if that's what he's worried about, or that's what they're looking at, I think it opens that door to, in 2 years, to look at it. And we'll just say, these are how we establish it by today's date, but in 2 years, you can look at it and see what's the shared space. That's a good idea, Warden. Any other comments on this then? Lindsay?
So I did just confirm that the rate that we're working on with Middlesex Center is 70% of the enhanced rate. So then what would be consistent here could be 70% of the comprehensive rate, or I'll just put that to you.
Sorry, Brad, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just real quick, Jim. So the Illerton one, Lindsay, square footage is the same size or not? Compared to what you're looking at in Strathroy space?
It's very close. It's around 1,000 square feet at Ilderton.
So it is pretty well apples to apples, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, thanks.
So, but the 70% is that 70% of the 819? So that would be like 573 a square foot, roughly?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Getting back to our original thought on this, I think it should be similar across the board. I don't think at the end of the day it affects a lot of money, but I think it's a consistency we have to look at. And the other thing is that we will be paying this rate for the next few years through the county. So I think it's part of protecting our library budget. But so then just to get back to how we can get a motion that Mary Gay's moving forward, it would be that we agree with the spending of the money, the capital and the money that comes from, or a grant plus the bequeath, and up to a total of the $635,000, and that and this is based on our library spaces being established as the library head office at a rate, the early childhood education at a rate which should be 70% of the enhanced, be identical, and the the library being at the comprehensive rate and the square footage is established, and everybody's agreed to that, plus the shared space, and that the shared space could be looked at administration after completion of two years. And that would at least understand that, yeah, the shared space is fair to everybody. And and with that, and possibly, and I guess I would suggest a 7-year lease with maybe an 18-month out. If anybody wanted to get out of it in 18 months, they could do it with the proper format that's in the lease agreement. But something like that. And what I'm wondering is that if we put the letter together, and Lindsay can send it out and make sure everybody's agreement with it, and then we can tweak it if we want to. But I know the motion's supposed to have everything in it. I'm trying to, but Kathy Bunning, just a question. We're not going outside our authority or within the act in order to do it this way.
No, I'm trying to draft something up now.
I knew that.
Yeah. And yeah, I think we know what you want, so we can just approve the motion. We will send it out to you and say, have we got everything that you wanted? And
Yes.
then once you guys say yay or nay, we can move forward.
Yeah, but it has to be tweaked slightly, but
Yeah,
I think you've got the gist of it, of what we want. But I
Yeah.
think that way, it tells Strathroy Care Doc, yeah, we're eager to go, we're ready to go, but here's what we want in for a term, and allow this to move forward immediately. But it does have to go to their council. I agree with you, Kathy. Are you on side with that, Brad? I see you're shaking your head, yes, but.
Yep.
Okay. Then that's a motion by Mary Gay. Wilkins, I need a seconder. Ruth, yeah, seconder. Is there any further discussion on this?
Just real quick, Jim,
Yes.
last Monday we met as the council, so it'll be 2 weeks from last Monday. But it needs to get in by the Wednesday of the week before to make the
Well,
agenda.
We'll be able to get it in there, I think, by the first of the week. So,
But just so everybody knows when the next meeting is anyways.
yeah. So how would this go to them? Would this go from a letter from the chair, or would this go from a response from the board through the chair? I just want to know how we'd present that to them.
I'd say response from the board.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. Okay.
Send a letter once.
I think a letter with the report, like a letter signed by the chair, but then this is the board. This is the board recommendation attached to it.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was trying to get, because I know the last time I sent a letter, they were surprised I sent them a letter, but Okay. So then, any further discussion on that motion? Okay. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, good. Thank you. So, I mean, that's I think this will allow to move it forward. Good decision on that. So we've moved the bequeath fund, so that motion stays the way it is. And then I guess there's nothing else, a motion for adjournment. Have we covered all the business, Lindsay?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, I got my cheat sheets and they look good. Let's move by Brad, second by Mary Gay. Further comments? All in favor?